The lawyer told me not to open the envelope until I was somewhere quiet. He didn't say it like a suggestion. He said it like a paramedic, telling you to sit down before you faint. I had just finished signing the deed transfer. One more sheet of paper shoved across the desk. One more signature that didn't feel like it belonged to me. And I still couldn't wrap my head around what had happened. I didn't have a relationship with my uncle. Not a real one. I'd met him twice as a kid at family gatherings where he stayed in the corner and smoked silently. Eyes fixed on the woods beyond the yard as if he'd rather be anywhere else. My mom called him the hermit and warned me never to bother him. Then he died, and for reasons no one would explain, he left his cabin to me. The lawyer's office smelled like old coffee and printer toner. Outside, traffic moved like a normal weekday. Inside, the air felt tight, like the room was holding its breath with me. The lawyer slid a key ring toward me. It had 3 keys on it, a brass cabin key, a small silver padlock key, and an old iron key that looked antique, heavy, pitted wrong. On the ring was a paper tag with my uncle's handwriting. Cabin, do not arrive after sunset. My mouth went dry. Is this? I started, then stopped because I didn't know what I was asking. A joke, a family tradition. A warning I was supposed to take seriously. The lawyer watched me carefully. He had the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many people inherit problems dressed up as gifts. There's also this, he said, and he placed a sealed envelope on top of the key ring. No law firm letterhead, no printed label, just my name written in my uncle's blocky handwriting. I picked it up. The paper felt thick, like he'd used something nicer than standard office stock. I'm not supposed to advise you on personal letters, the lawyer said, voice low. But read it. My throat tightened. A list of what? The lawyer's gaze flicked to the key ring, then back to my face. A list of rules, he said. I laughed once, because it sounded absurd. The lawyer didn't laugh back. So I didn't. I drove home with the envelope on my passenger seat, like it was a sleeping animal. That night, I read it in my apartment kitchen, with all the lights on. The envelope contained 3 pages, handwritten front and back. The first page had a title, underlined twice. Rules to survive the night below that. My uncle had written a single line that made my stomach drop. If you're reading this at the cabin, you're already late. I swallowed hard and kept reading. The rules were numbered. Simple sentences. No flowery language. No explanation. Just instructions with the cold practicality of someone who learned them the hard way. Rule number 1. If you hear footsteps on the porch after dark, do not check the window. Do not open the door. Turn off all lights and sit on the floor until the footsteps stop. Rule number 2. If the radio turns on by itself, do not speak. Unplug it. Do not listen for words. Rule number 3. Do not say your full name inside the cabin. Not to yourself, not to anyone else. If you must speak, use a nickname. Rule number 4. Do not count knocks. Do not count anything. Actually, once the sun goes down. Rule number 5. If the stove goes cold while a fire is burning, leave the room immediately and close the door behind you. Do not look back through the doorway. Rule number 6. If you wake up at exactly 3:13 a.m., keep your eyes closed until you hear birds. My hands started shaking by rule number 6. I wanted to stop reading. I wanted to fold the pages back into the envelope and pretend my uncle had been mentally ill, that he'd spent too much time alone in the woods and invented a fantasy to give shape to his fear. But the rules weren't written like fantasy. They were written like procedure, like someone documenting a dangerous machine. At the bottom of the last page, my uncle had written a final note. The cabin is not yours until it lets you leave. Do not bring anyone with you, and whatever you do, do not prove. The rules are real. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. Then I did the stupid thing anyway. 2 days later, I took time off work, packed my car, and drove toward the cabin. I told myself I was doing it for closure, for inheritance paperwork, for the chance to sell the property and finally get ahead in life. The truth was uglier. I wanted to know if my uncle had been telling the truth. The cabin was deep enough into the woods that my GPS stopped updating. My phone lost signal. The road turned to gravel, then dirt, then something that felt more like a suggestion than a maintained path. Trees pressed close. Shadows stretched across the road. The sky above the branches looked bruised, like the day was ending faster than it should. I checked the time, 4:47 p.m. Sunset wasn't tea for hours, but under that canopy, it already felt like dusk. My Uncle S. tag echoed in my head. Do not arrive after sunset. I drove faster. The road bent sharply, and the cabin appeared suddenly, as if it had been hiding behind the trees until the last second. A small log structure with a tin roof, half swallowed by wilderness. A porch out front, a woodpile stacked neatly under an awning. A radio antenna mounted above the window like a single raised finger. I pulled into the clearing and cut the engine. The silence hit hard. No birds, no insects, no distant traffic. Just wind threading through branches like whispering. I grabbed the keyring and stepped out. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and something faintly metallic underneath. I walked up the porch steps and hesitated at the front door. The brass key slid into the lock smoothly, like it had been used recently. The door swung open with a soft creak. Inside, the cabin was cleaner than it should have been. Not abandoned, not dusty, lived in, but paused. Like someone had stepped out for a moment and expected to come back. A lantern sat on the table with fresh oil. A box of matches lay beside it. A bag of salt was on the counter. Open extra locks sat in a neat row like tools. And on the shelf above the fireplace, the radio was already on. Not loud, just a faint hiss of static like breath. Then, as I stepped fully into the cabin, the static shifted. It shaped itself into a voice. Not my uncle's. Not a stranger's mine. Hey, my own voice said softly through the radio speaker. And in that moment, with the sun still technically up outside, I understood why the first rule wasn't about monsters or weapons. It was about not looking out the window, because the cabin didn't need the night to start. I stood in the doorway with my hands still on the knob, listening to my own voice come through the radio, like a confession I hadn't meant to make. Hey, it repeated, softer this time. It's okay. My mouth went dry. Rule number 2. If the radio turns on by itself, do not speak. Unplug it. Do not listen for words. I didn't respond. I didn't say hello back, even though my nervous system wanted to prove I was still in control by doing something normal. I walked to the shelf without taking my eyes off the radio, like it might sprout hands and grab me. My fingers shook as I reached behind it and yanked the plug out of the wall. The speaker hissed once, and then went dead. Silence poured into the cabin, thick and immediate. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Then I checked the window without thinking. Just a reflex. Look outside. Confirm reality. Confirm I'm not trapped in a horror story. My eyes hit the glass and froze. The porch was empty. Trees beyond swayed slowly. Daylight filtered through branches and thin sheets. Nothing wrong. And yet something about the view felt staged. Like the world outside was too still, too cooperative. I tore my gaze away and forced myself to focus on normal tasks. Unpack. Check the rooms. Make sure there wasn't a gas leak. Make sure the roof wasn't caving in. The cabin layout was simple. Living room, kitchenette, a tiny bathroom, one bedroom. No basement door, no upstairs, just one long hallway that ended at the bedroom like a throat. I found more things that made my stomach tighten. Extra batteries stacked by the lantern, a second bag of salt. 3 different deadbolts on the front door, like someone had upgraded the lock every time a new fear arrived. And on the kitchen table, neatly centered like a centerpiece, was my uncle's rules list again. Only this copy looked older, edges yellowed, corners worn from being handled too many times. Beside it was a small spiral notebook, a journal. I didn't open it yet. I told myself I'd read the rules first, from top to bottom, like the lawyer had insisted. Rule number 1. If you hear footsteps on the porch after dark, do not check the window. Do not open the door. Turn off all lights and sit on the floor until the footsteps stop. Rule number 3. Do not say your full name inside the cabin, not to yourself. Not to anyone else, if you must speak. Use a nickname. Rule number 4. Do not count knocks. Do not count anything, actually, once the sun goes down. Rule number 5. If the stove goes cold while a fire is burning, leave the room immediately and close the door behind you. Do not look back through the doorway. Rule number 6. If you wake up at exactly 3:13 a.m., keep your eyes closed until you hear birds. The rest of the list was worse in a quiet way specific. Practical, like someone documenting a dangerous animal. S habits. If the lantern flame bends toward the hallway, do not follow it. If you smell wet earth inside the cabin, lock the bedroom door and stay there until sunrise. If you hear your name from the tree line, do not answer, even as a joke. The last rule was underlined twice. Do not prove the rules are real. I set the paper down and stared at it until my eyes burned. Outside, the light faded faster than it should have. Under the trees, dusk arrived like someone flipping a switch. I moved automatically into the kind of prep mode you use before a storm. Salt line at the threshold, because my uncle had left the bag open like he expected it. Lantern within reach, bedroom door unlocked in case I needed it quickly. Then I hesitated at the notebook. I told myself I shouldn't. That reading more would just poison my brain with suggestions. But the radio had spoken in my voice before I'd done anything else. So I opened the notebook. The first page was dated 4 months before my uncle died. If you're reading this, you're here. That means either I'm gone, or I finally got lucky and left. Don't assume which. My throat tightened. The journal wasn't poetic. It was my uncle's voice in the only way I'd ever known it. Short sentences, observations, warnings. He wrote about arriving here years ago with no rules, just a deed and a key. He wrote about the first night footsteps on the porch, a voice outside using his mother's tone, a knock that sounded like a fist wrapped in cloth. He wrote about surviving because he refused to open the door. He wrote about learning that the cabin didn't haunt you the way movies do. It tested you. It offered you relief in the shape of normal behavior. Answer the door, check the window, call out. Count the knocks, prove you're brave. His entries were full of one repeating theme. Don't participate. Then I hit a page where the handwriting changed slightly, more rushed. It got inside once. I stared at the sentence until my stomach rolled. He continued. Not through the door, not through a window. Through my mouth, I swallowed hard. Below that, he'd scribbled a line in capital letters. Saying your name is a key. Rule number 3 suddenly felt less like superstition and more like physics. A car door slammed outside. I flinched so hard I nearly tipped the lantern. Then I realized it was my own car door, metal cooling, settling, making a sound in the evening air. I forced my breathing to slow. This is what the rules were for, I thought. For the way your mind leaps at shadows when you're alone and scared. I made a fire in the stove, partly for warmth, and partly because I needed something that felt ordinary. The flames caught and crackled. The cabin smelled like wood smoke, comforting and familiar. I ate a granola bar because I couldn't stomach anything else, and then the sun finally went down. Not dramatically, not with a crash. Just a gradual dimming until the cabin's windows turned into black mirrors reflecting my own pale face. I turned off the main lights, leaving only the lantern. My Uncle Eslis said light could be a problem, but darkness felt worse. The lantern was a compromise-controlled flame. Controllable. I sat on the couch and waited. At 9:12 p.m., I heard the first sound from outside. Footsteps on the porch slow. Even have to be a person. My stomach dropped. Rule number 1. Do not check the window. Do not open the door. Turn off all lights and sit on the floor until the footsteps stop. My hand shook as I reached for the lantern and snuffed it out. Darkness swallowed the cabin instantly. I slid down to the floor beside the couch, knees tucked to my chest, breathing shallow. The footsteps continued. They crossed the porch boards like someone taking their time. Then they stopped directly in front of the door. A pause, then a soft knock. 1, 2, 3, my heart hammered. Rule number 4 screamed in my head. Do not count knocks. I hadn't meant to count. My brain did it anyway. Then the voice came. Not angry. Not threatening, my uncle's voice. Hey, it said softly, right on the other side of the door. It's cold out here. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. My uncle was dead. I knew that. But hearing his voice in the dark made some part of me want to believe in miracles or mistakes or anything other than this. The voice continued, warmer now. "You don't have to do this alone," it said. My hands shook. I dug my nails into my palms. Then the voice shifted. "My mother, sweetheart," she said. "Why aren't you answering me?" Tears stung my eyes. The porch boards creaked again, like whoever stood there had leaned closer to the door. "Just crack it," my mother's voice whispered. I stayed silent. I stayed still. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the footsteps retreated. One slow step, then another. Then the sound faded into the trees. I didn't move until I heard something else. Birds, not loud, not full morning chorus. Just one single chirp outside, like a reminder that the world still existed. Only then did I breathe again. When I lit the lantern, the cabin looked the same. But when I walked to the front door, my stomach dropped. The deadbolts were undone. All three, from the inside, and in the dirt just beyond the threshold, visible through the gap at the bottom of the door. There were bare footprints leading away, starting from inside the cabin, starting from where I'd been sitting. I didn't sleep after that. I tried. I lay in the bed fully clothed with the lantern turned low, staring at the ceiling beams, and listening for my own heartbeat to stop sounding like footsteps. But every time the cabin creaked, my body went rigid. Every time wind threaded through the trees, my mind tried to shape it into speech. And every time my eyes drifted toward the window, I remembered my uncle's warning. Don't prove the rules are real. By morning, I was exhausted in that special way that makes you reckless. I made coffee on the little stove. The flame looked normal. The metal warmed. No rule triggered. That should have calmed me. It didn't, because the front door deadbolts were still unlocked. I locked them again, hands shaking, and then I stepped out onto the porch in full daylight, telling myself that daylight was safe, that nothing could stand there in the sun and whisper my name. The forest around the clearing looked ordinary. Cold air, damp earth, birdsong returning in thin waves like the world was pretending last night hadn't happened. And the footprints were there, bare feet, human-sized, pressed into the dirt, leading from the threshold out toward the corn. No, not corn. There was no corn here, just thick brush and a line of trees. They didn't belong to me. I hadn't been barefoot. I hadn't stepped outside. They led away from my porch and vanished at the tree line, like someone had walked into the woods and been erased. I stared at them until my stomach rolled. That's when I heard a vehicle, an engine grinding slowly up the rutted drive, tires crunching over gravel. The sound was so normal it made my eyes sting. A person, a human, someone who could confirm I wasn't losing my mind. A pickup truck rolled into the clearing older, dented, mud-caked. It stopped far from the porch like the driver didn't want to get too close. A man got out, late 50s maybe, tall and wiry, wearing a heavy coat and gloves. He moved like someone who'd spent his life outdoors and didn't trust quiet. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He stopped at the edge of the clearing and looked at the cabin like it was an animal that might lunge. Then he looked at me. "Morning," he said, voice flat. "Yeah, I managed. My throat was raw. Can I help you?" The man's gaze flicked to my porch, to the door, to the windows, then back to my face. "You're the new owner," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an assessment. "I inherited it," I said. The man nodded once like that explained everything and nothing. He reached into the bed of his truck and pulled out a cardboard box. He held it in both hands as if it mattered. "Supplies," he said, and he set it on the ground at the edge of the clearing. He didn't bring it closer. He didn't step onto my porch. He didn't cross the invisible line between the yard and the cabin. That made my stomach tighten. "Why won't you come closer?" I asked. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because I like breathing," he said. I swallowed hard. He didn't answer directly. He looked at my face again and said, "Did you answer it last night?" My throat tightened. "Answer what?" The man's expression didn't change. "Good," he said. I stared at him. He nodded once. The phrase made my skin prickle. "My name's Owen," he said after a beat. Like names were something you rationed. "Caretaker," I repeated. Owen's eyes flicked toward the trees. "I keep the road passable," he said. I checked the property line. My mouth went dry. Owen nodded once. "For him," he said. My stomach clenched. There were others. Owen's gaze stayed on me steady and tired. There's always others, he said. I looked at the box on the ground. What's in it? Food, Owen said. Batteries. Candles. A new lantern wick. More salt. A lock. Owen nodded. Inside latch, he said. Not for keeping something out. My throat tightened. I stepped off the porch without thinking and took 2 steps toward him. Owen raised a hand immediately, palm out. Stop, he said sharp. I froze mid-step. Owen's voice dropped. You don't cross the line with anyone here, he said. Not them, not me. My mouth went dry. Why? Owen swallowed hard. Because it learns, he said. I stared at him, heart pounding. Owen nodded toward the cabin. Go back up on your porch, he said. I did. Slowly, like I was obeying a handler. When my boots hit the porch boards, Owen's shoulders loosened slightly, like he'd been holding tension. He pointed at my face. Did you say your full name inside the cabin? My stomach dropped. Rule number 3. No, I said. Owen nodded. He glanced down at the ground near my door. You see footprints? Yes, I admitted. Owen's eyes tightened. That means it got you moving, he said quietly. My throat tightened. How could I leave footprints if I didn't? Owen cut me off. Don't chase it, he said. I swallowed. Owen's gaze hardened. It's rent, he said. Rent, Owen nodded. You inherited a boundary, he said. The rules are the lease agreement. My stomach churned. Paid who? Owen didn't answer. He looked at the trees and then back at me. You can leave today if you want, he said. Daylight. My throat tightened. Asking what? Owen's eyes narrowed. Asking you to prove it, he said. He picked up his keys and glanced at the road behind him. Road changes at dusk, he added. Not always, but enough. My stomach dropped. You're telling me I could get trapped here, I said. Owen's face went blank. It's a remote cabin, he said, but his tone said that wasn't what he meant. I swallowed hard. Why didn't my uncle just burn it down? Owen's mouth tightened. Because fire doesn't erase ownership, he said. He hesitated, then said something that made my skin crawl. Your uncle didn't die in town, Owen said quietly. He didn't go to a hospital. My throat tightened. Then what happened? Owen looked away. He finished his last night, he said. Silence stretched. Birds chirped. Wind moved through trees. Then Owen pulled a pen from his pocket and a small strip of paper, and he wrote something quickly. He held it up so I could see it from the porch. It was a new rule, written in fresh ink. Tonight, do not use your real name. My stomach dropped. Owen folded the paper and set it on the box of supplies at the edge of the clearing. Then he turned back to his truck. Wait, I called, voice cracking. Owen paused, hand on his door. I swallowed hard. Did I inherit it? Or was I assigned? Owen didn't look at me. Then he drove away, leaving me alone with the cabin, the rules, and the knowledge that the next night wasn't going to be a repeat. It was going to be an escalation, because now the rules were changing for me. I left the supplies box outside until noon, not because I didn't need it. My hands were shaking and my stomach felt hollow, but because Owen's behavior had planted a new kind of fear in me, the idea that crossing certain invisible lines mattered more than locks and walls. So I watched the box from the porch like it was bait. Nothing came out of the trees. No voice called my name, no footsteps on the porch. The cabin stayed quiet in that unnervingly patient way, like it was letting me forget what night felt like. When the sun was at its highest and the shadows were shortest, I walked down, grabbed the box, and brought it inside. Inside the air felt different, not colder, not warmer, just heavier, like the cabin had been holding its breath, and now exhaled when I brought the supplies over the threshold. I set the box on the table and forced myself to do something normal, inventory. Batteries, candles, lantern wick, salt, an extra deadbolt, and at the bottom, wrapped in brown paper, a small plastic device, a voice recorder. Not fancy, the kind you use for interviews or meetings. There was a sticky note on it in Owen's handwriting. Don't play these after dark. My mouth went dry. I checked the recorder. It had files saved, 3 of them. They were labeled with dates, all of them recent. One was from 2 nights ago. Before my uncle died, apparently. My hand shook as I set it back down. I didn't play it. Not yet. I read Owen's new rule again instead. Tonight, do not use your real name. That felt impossible. You can avoid saying your full name. You can avoid introducing yourself. But not using your real name meant something deeper, like even thinking it wrong could matter, my uncle's journal had said. Saying your name is a key. If names were keys, then Owen was telling me not to carry mine. I tried to laugh it off. I tried to tell myself this was just the way isolated people spoke about fear, metaphor, ritual. Trauma logic? Then I went down the hallway and stopped short. The hallway was longer than it had been yesterday. Not dramatically, not like a funhouse. Just stretched. The bedroom door seemed farther away. The wall lights, tiny sconces, were spaced differently. I stood there, staring until my eyes watered. I turned around fast and looked back toward the kitchen. Same distance as before. Then I turned back toward the bedroom again. Longer. My throat tightened. I walked down, counting my steps without meaning to. 1, 2, I stopped, hard hammering. Rule number 4. Do not count anything once the sun goes down. It wasn't sundown yet. I swallowed hard and walked without counting, forcing my eyes to stay on the floorboards. When I reached the bedroom, I found something that made my stomach drop. The bedroom window was open. I hadn't opened it. A cold draft slid into the room, smelling like wet earth and leaves. Wet earth. One of my uncle's later rules, if you smell wet earth inside the cabin, lock the bedroom door and stay there until sunrise. I froze. It was noon. But the smell was real. I backed out of the bedroom and shut the door, hands shaking. Then I realized something worse. The smell wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the hallway itself, stronger near the end where the bedroom sat like a mouth. I stepped backward into the kitchen and sat down hard in the chair, trying to breathe. The cabin wasn't waiting for sundown. It was rearranging itself in daylight, like it was getting ready. My eyes drifted to the radio shelf. The radio was still unplugged. Good. I checked anyway. Still unplugged. Then the radio speaker hissed. Just a faint sound, barely audible. Like someone inhaling through teeth. I flinched. It shouldn't make any sound without power. I stepped closer and saw the plug, still out of the wall. The hiss continued. Not from the radio. From the wall outlet itself. A tiny breathy static, as if the cabin was using the wiring like lungs. I backed away. I didn't speak. I forced myself to focus on the recorder. Owen's note, don't play after dark. Still daylight. I picked it up and pressed play on the oldest file. The one from 2 nights ago. My uncle's voice filled the kitchen, tinny but unmistakable. Not scared. Not frantic. Tired. If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out, he said. And my chest tightened. A pause. Then he continued, voice low. The rules are changing. My mouth went dry. He knew I was coming, or he knew someone was. You don't own this place, my uncle's recording said. You rent your nights. He paused again, and I heard a faint sound under his voice. Footsteps on wood, porch boards. My stomach dropped. He was recording during a night. Tonight it will try the radio first, my uncle said quietly. It likes voices, it likes names. My throat tightened. Uncle, my uncle's voice continued, as if answering me. If you respond even once, you'll feel relief, he said. Because you'll think you've done something. A soft, amused exhale came through the recording, not my uncle's. Then, layered under it, a whisper that made my stomach turn. My uncle's voice again, but wrong, smoother closer to the mic. Open the door, it whispered. The recording ended abruptly, like someone had yanked the tape. My hands shook as I set the recorder down. My mouth was dry. My eyes stung. The cabin creaked. A slow settling sound from the hallway. And then I heard the lantern flame. Not crackling, bending. I hadn't lit the lantern, but the one on the table, fresh oil wick ready, had a tiny flame on it now, like a pilot light. It bent toward the hallway. Rule: if the lantern flame bends toward the hallway, do not follow it. I stood so fast the chair scraped, and the sound felt like shouting. The flame bent farther, as if pointing. Then, from the bedroom end of the hall, something knocked. Not on the front door inside the cabin. 3 slow knocks on the bedroom door. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the hallway. The lantern flame straightened, then bent again, more aggressively, toward the bedroom, as if the cabin was giving me directions. That was when I noticed the bathroom door. It hadn't been there yesterday. A door in the hallway between the kitchen and bedroom, plain and white, with a brass knob that looked older than the cabin's other hardware. I stared at it, heart hammering. The cabin was adding doors, adding options, adding mistakes. I kept backing away until my shoulders hit the kitchen wall. Then my phone, dead since I arrived, lit up on the counter without being plugged in. 1 bar of signal, 1 notification, a voicemail, no caller ID, just a timestamp, 3:13 a.m. My throat tightened. I didn't T-touch it, but the screen preview showed the first line of the transcription anyway. "I'm inside," it read. The cabin wasn't just outside anymore. It wasn't even just in the hallway. It was in my devices, my air, my timing. It was learning what I feared most, not dying here, but losing the part of me that could tell what was real. And night hadn't even started. By late afternoon, I'd convinced myself I needed to leave. Not because I was brave, because staying felt like waiting for a trap to spring, and pretending that was a choice. Owen had said the road changes at dusk. He'd said it casually. But the way he'd avoided stepping onto the porch told me the cabin didn't just want company. It wanted witnesses. It wanted someone else to confirm my fear, so I packed fast. Threw clothes back into my bag, grabbed the recorder and the rules list, and the journal without knowing why. Like evidence would matter if I survived. I stepped outside and walked to my car. The clearing looked normal in daylight. Birds chirped. Wind moved the tops of the trees. The cabin sat behind me like a patient animal. I got in, started the engine, and felt a rush of relief that almost made me laugh. Then my radio turned on. Not the cabin radio. My car radio. Static hissed through the speakers, soft and breathy. And under it, a whisper shaped itself into words with the same intimate tone the cabin had used through my uncle's recording. "Don't go," it said. My stomach dropped. I shut the car radio off. It turned itself back on. Static again. Then my own voice, calm and convincing, like I was narrating instructions to myself. "It's safer to stay," my voice said. My hand shook on the steering wheel. I put the car in reverse and started backing out anyway. The driveway behind me wasn't there. I stared through the rear window trees. Brush. No dirt track. No tire ruts. No exit. Just a wall of woods where the driveway should have been. My breath caught. I blinked hard, convinced I'd angled wrong. I pulled forward, turned the wheel, tried again. Still trees. My mouth went dry. I threw the car into park and got out, heart hammering. The driveway was gone. Not blocked. Not flooded. Gone like the cabin had erased the idea of leaving. I stumbled backward, staring at the woods as if it might glitch back into existence. That's when I realized something else. The wind had stopped. Leaves hung motionless. The clearing felt like a photograph, still wind. My uncle's journal had mentioned it without calling it that, and now Owen's earlier warning clicked into place with sick clarity. The cabin decided when it was night. Not the sun, not the clock. It decided. My throat tightened. I turned slowly toward the cabin. The porch boards creaked once, like someone shifting weight. There was no one there. But I felt watched anyway. I went back inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air loosened slightly. A subtle relief, like the cabin approved of my choice. Or like it had never been a choice. I sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking, and spread out the evidence like a detective in a cheap movie. The rules list, my uncle's journal, Owen's new rule, and the recorder. I needed to understand the why, because without why, every rule felt like random terror. And random terror is how you go mad. My uncle's journal flipped open easily to the same page I'd read earlier. It got inside once, not through the door, through my mouth. I stared at that sentence until my eyes burned. Then I kept reading past it, deeper into entries I'd avoided last night because they were too specific. My uncle wrote about the first time he answered, not to a voice outside, not to knocking, to silence. He'd been alone for weeks, he wrote, listening to wind and creaks and his own thoughts, until his brain started making patterns out of nothing. One night, he spoke his full name out loud just to hear a human sound, and the cabin answered. Not immediately, not dramatically. The next day, he found a note on the table in his own handwriting, written while he slept. Thank you for introducing yourself. My stomach rolled. The cabin didn't need permission to haunt you. It needed permission to fiddy address you. Names as keys. A signature in the air. Consent. The rules weren't about fighting a creature. They were about refusing a contract. I looked at Owen's fresh rule again. Tonight, do not use your real name. That wasn't superstition. That was legal advice. My uncle's journal continued. Once it has your name, it can wear it. Once it wears it, it can speak through you. Once it speaks through you, it can invite itself in deeper. I swallowed hard and turned to the last pages, entries close to his death. The handwriting was shakier, shorter, as if he'd been writing between listening. It wants a handoff. It wants the deed to mean something. It wants ownership to be binding. My throat tightened. Ownership is binding once a night is survived. That line from the will's final clause. The lawyer had mentioned it in passing, standard inheritance language. But my uncle had written it like a threat. I grabbed the will copy from my bag and read the clause again with shaking hands. The property transfers fully upon completion of one overnight occupancy by the beneficiary. Overnight occupancy. A legal way to say you can't back out once you've stayed. I stared at the paper until my vision blurred. The cabin wasn't just in the woods. It wasn't just a monster wearing voices. It was a mechanism designed to trap ownership, to make sure someone always held the deed, because the deed was the leash. The owner was the anchor. My uncle didn't leave this cabin to me because he wanted me to have a peaceful retreat. He left it to me because he needed someone to take the anchor off him, a handoff, a shift change. The recorder on the table clicked softly by itself, like a button being pressed. My skin prickled. It began playing the newest file, the one dated the night before my uncle died. His voice came through, strained and quiet. A pause, a faint creak like porch boards. Then my uncle's voice again, softer, like he was forcing calm. I stayed silent. I didn't answer. He inhaled shackily. But it doesn't just want names anymore, he whispered. My stomach dropped. The recording crackled, and under his voice I heard that same whisper. The cabin's voice. Too close to the mic. Let me in, it breathed. Then, louder, sudden. 3 knocks, not on a door, but somewhere inside the cabin. The recording ended with a final line from my uncle, spoken like a confession. I'm not dying, he whispered. The lantern flame on the table bent toward the hallway again, and the front door deadbolts clicked, one by one, undoing themselves. The cabin door began to open by itself at sunset, slowly, like it was ready to meet its new owner. The door didn't swing wide. It didn't slam. It opened the way a mouth opens when it's trying not to scare you. A few inches at first, just enough to let the outside air spill in. Cold pine, wet earth, something faintly sweet underneath. The porch light wasn't on. The clearing beyond was dim and still, like the world was holding its breath. The deadbolts hung unlocked. The cabin had done it politely. A ridiculous thought surfaced. It's giving you a chance. Then I remembered my uncle's last line. It doesn't just want names anymore. It wants the door open from the inside. It wasn't asking to enter. It was asking me to participate. I backed away from the door slowly and forced my hands to move with purpose, not panic, procedure. That's what my uncle had left me, a manual. I grabbed the bag of salt and poured a thick line across the threshold, without stepping close enough to touch the door. The salt hissed faintly as it hit the floorboards, not like water on hot metal, like static discharging. The door shuddered once, as if something on the other side had pressed against it. I swallowed hard and pushed the door shut with the flat of my palm, careful not to cross the salt line. It closed with a soft click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the knocking started. Not the polite 3 knocks from last night. A single knock. Slow. Heavy. Like a fist wrapped in cloth. I didn't count. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I turned off the lantern. Darkness swallowed the kitchen. I lowered myself to the floor beside the couch, back pressed tight against the upholstery, and waited. My phone buzzed on the counter. No signal. No reason. just vibration like an insect. I ignored it. The knock came again, louder. Then a voice, soft and intimate, from right outside the door. My own voice. "Hey," it said gently. "You did the salt." My throat tightened. The voice chuckled quietly, like it was proud of me. "Now unlock it," my voice said. I pressed my forehead to my knees and breathed shallow. Rule number 3, names are keys. Dawn. T used your real name tonight, but it was already using my voice without my name, which meant it had moved past needing the key. It wanted the act, the choice, the confirmation. Outside, the porch boards creaked. Footsteps, slow, pacing, like someone bored. Then the voice shifted to my mother. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "what are you doing out here alone?" Tears stung my eyes. Not because I believed it was her, but because my body did that stupid animal thing, where it reacts to familiar comfort, even when your brain knows it's a trap. "Open the door," my mother whispered. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste blood to keep myself anchored. The footsteps stopped directly in front of the door. Then the doorknob turned. Not rattling, not frantic, testing, the salt line held. I could feel it, even in the dark, like a boundary with tension. The knob released. Silence. Then the whisper came again, closer, as if pressed to the crack beneath the door. "Say your name," it murmured. My stomach dropped. That was the handoff. The contract clause. The moment where I'd confirm ownership with a spoken signature. I didn't speak. I didn't even whisper. I stayed silent until my throat ached. Minutes crawled. The voice changed again. Warmer, quieter. "My uncle. I'm sorry," he whispered. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. "Please." His voice continued. "Don't make it harder." I squeezed my eyes shut. "If you're hearing this, then I did it. I'm transferring." He'd warned me. Even his voice could be used as a lever. The cabin creaked behind me. Inside, not outside the hallway. A soft step on the floorboards near the bedroom. My blood ran cold. Rule number 1 was about footsteps on the porch. No rule had said anything about footsteps inside. The lantern flame had been pointing toward the hallway, all day like a finger. I felt my skin crawl with the certainty that if I turned my head, I'd see something standing at the end of the hall where the bedroom door waited. I stayed still. Then the recorder on the table clicked. It turned on by itself. Owen's note, "Don't play these after dark." A file began playing. Tinny voice filling the dark kitchen. My uncle's voice recorded, repeating. "I'm not dying," it said softly. The recording looped over and over, like the cabin was chanting it. Then the recorded voice changed. Not my uncle anymore. A smoother version too close to the mic. "Transfer accepted," it whispered. My stomach dropped. The cabin was using the recorder like a witness. Like a notary, my throat tightened. I had to stop it. But rule number 2 had been about the radio. Unplug it. Don't speak. Nothing about a recorder. Because my uncle hadn't anticipated Owen bringing one. Or he had. And this was part of the escalation. I moved slow, careful, crawling on the floor toward the table. My hands shook. I kept my eyes on the wood grain, not letting them drift toward the hallway. The recorder's tiny screen glowed in the dark. I reached for it, and the moment my fingertip touched the plastic casing, the voice outside the door laughed quietly. "Good," it said in my voice. My stomach churned. I pressed the stop button. The recorder kept playing. I pressed again, harder. Still playing, the voice on the recorder shifted to my voice now, perfectly. "Say it," it whispered. My hands shook violently. The porch boards creaked again, footsteps leaving or circling. I couldn't tell. And then, in the hallway, a door opened softly. Not the front door, the bedroom door. A draft slid into the kitchen, smelling like wet earth. Rule: if you smell wet earth inside, lock the bedroom door and stay there until sunrise. But the bedroom door was open now, which meant the cabin was overriding the safe room. It was collapsing options. I backed away from the table, crawling fast, heart hammering. I needed a new plan. Owen's rule: do not use your real name tonight. So, don't. I forced myself to sit up against the couch, shaking, and did the only creative thing my panic could assemble. I chose a false name, a throwaway, a nickname, a name that wasn't mine, and I spoke it once, loud and clear into the dark. "Evan," I said. The cabin went still. The recorder stopped instantly. The porch footsteps froze. Even the wind outside seemed to pause, like the whole place was listening. Then the voice outside the door whispered, softer, intrigued. Even, he repeated, tasting it. My stomach churned. I'd broken the biggest rule, speaking on purpose. I didn't know if I'd saved myself or signed a different kind of contract. The hallway boards creaked. Something inside the cabin moved toward the kitchen. Slow, careful steps, not rushing, approaching like it knew where I was. And then the front door behind the salt line opened a few inches again. Not forced, invited. As if my false name had unlocked a smaller latch. In the gap, darkness pressed close, and from that darkness a voice spoke. Neither mine nor my uncle's nor my mother's. A new voice. Quiet and pleased. Hello, Evan, it said. And I realized with sick clarity that the cabin didn't need my real name to enter. It just needed me to start the conversation. The moment it said, Hello, Evan, the cabin felt smaller. Not physically collapsing, more like the air thickened and the walls leaned in, as if the structure was listening harder. My false name hung in the room like smoke. I'd avoided my real name, but I'd still done the one thing the rules were trying to prevent. I'd participated. The salt line at the threshold hissed again, louder this time, and the front door shuddered as if something pressed against the gap. The door didn't open farther, but the darkness in the crack deepened, like there was more behind it than porch and trees. In the hallway, the footsteps stopped. I couldn't see down the hole from where I sat on the floor, but I could feel the presence there, like a weight at the end of a rope. The lantern on the table flared to life by itself. The flame bent toward the hallway, steady and accusatory. Rule, don't follow it. I didn't. The voice from the doorway spoke again, patient. Evan, it said softly, you can come closer. My stomach churned. It wasn't threatening. It never had to. It was offering relief wrapped in normal behavior. Stand up, walk over, open the door. Finish the conversation you started. My uncle had called it rent. Owen had called it a lease. A contract you signed with your mouth. My hands shook as I reached for the journal, dragging it closer across the floor without standing. My fingers flipped pages too fast, searching for something I'd missed, some failsafe my uncle had hidden for the moment. You broke the rule anyway. Near the back, I found a page folded in half and taped to the cover, like he'd added it last minute. It was written in heavy pen. If you speak to it, don't give it your name. Don't give it your face. Give it a path. My throat tightened. Not a name, not a conversation, a direction. I looked toward the back door, the one facing the cornfield wall of trees. It had 3 deadbolts too. It led into the brush behind the cabin, right up against the start of the woods. If the cabin wanted a door open from the inside, then maybe I could choose which door. The front door was the invitation. The back door could be a trap. My hands shook as I crawled toward the kitchen, keeping low, staying away from windows. Not looking down the hallway. The voice at the front door followed me with sound, not footsteps. I can hear you, it said calmly. My stomach turned at how easily it wore the false name now, like it had accepted it as a temporary label. I reached the kitchen counter and grabbed the spare padlock key from the key ring. The small silver one the lawyer had handed me without explanation. I hadn't used it yet. I hadn't even known what it was for. I found its match under the sink, a metal hasp on a small access door in the floorboards that I hadn't noticed in daylight, hidden beneath a rag rug. Not a basement, not stairs. Just a hatch you could open if you knelt and wanted to know what was under your feet. My stomach dropped. The voice at the front door chuckled softly. No, it said. That confirmed it. The hatch wasn't the path I wanted to give. I slid the rug back into place and crawled toward the back door. The footsteps in the hallway started again, slow and careful, matching my movement. Not rushing to stop me, following like a shadow. I reached the back door, hands shaking at the deadbolts. The cabin creaked above me as if warning itself. Rule number 1 had said. Dawn. T checked the window during porch footsteps. Nothing about opening the back door at night. But this wasn't a normal night anymore. I'd already broken the rule. The cabin was already escalating. I unlocked the deadbolts one by one. The final latch clicked, and the back door opened easily, as if it had been waiting. Cold air rushed in, smelling like pine and wet earth. The woods behind the cabin were black, the trees packed tight like teeth. No moon, no stars, just darkness and the faint whisper of leaves. I didn't step out. I just opened the door fully and set it wide, like offering a route. Then I crawled backward into the kitchen, keeping my eyes low. The front door crack widened. The darkness there seemed to pause, as if offended. The voice at the front door grew sharper. "That's not polite," it said. I didn't answer. From the hallway, the footsteps stopped at the threshold, as if whatever was inside had reached the edge of the kitchen. The lantern flame bent hard toward the hallway now, almost horizontal, like wind was blowing it from that direction. I kept my gaze on the floorboards, breathing shallow. Then the sound changed, a rustle, like fabric dragging. A slow slide across wood. Something moved from the front of the cabin, toward the back. Not through the hallway with footsteps, through the walls, through the space between. The cabin shifted. Air pressure changed. The back door darkness deepened, and the sound of the woods outside seemed to swallow itself, as if the trees were inhaling. A voice came from the back doorway now. Not mine, not my mother, not my uncle. That same new voice from before, pleased and close. "Thank you," it whispered, and then it moved out. Not a dramatic exit, not a leap into the forest, just a soft slip, like a hand leaving a glove. The moment it did, the cabin exhaled, the lantern flame straightened. The hallway felt longer again, like space returned. The front door closed on its own with a soft click, deadbolts snapping back into place. The woods outside the back door stayed black, but the air felt lighter, like something had left. I shut the back door, shaking, and locked it again. I didn't move until morning. When dawn finally came, it came quietly. Gray light seeping through the trees, birds tentative at first, then louder. I stepped onto the porch and found the clearing unchanged. No claw marks, no blood, no proof. Except one thing. In the dirt at the edge of the porch, there were fresh footprints. Bare feet, walking away from the cabin toward the woods. And beside them, deeper in the soil, were drag marks, like something heavy had been pulled. I lived through the night. The will's claws held, but when I went back inside, the rules list on the kitchen table was different. Same paper, same handwriting.